Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Today's program is titled Muhammad Ali and Jack Johnson. These titles go back 10 or 15 years ago, at least, because we said, I would say 15 years ago, because it was around the 2005 period where we talked about the style that we would use would be Muhammad Ali and Jack Johnson. Okay, first of all, there's a generational thing in this. All of us in our age, we remember Muhammad Ali very well. But we would say, from our research, from my father's generation, my father was born in 1900, their great champion was Jack Johnson when he won the championship or defended the championship in 1910. That same struggle that he had, or when he won that fight against Jim Jeffries in Reno, that was a fight against what they call the Great White Hope. Once Jack Johnson won a championship in 1908 down in Australia, there was a big push on to find a Great White Hope. You know, someone that would take the championship from that black man. You have to remember, early 1900s was the height of the white man's career. In those days, the white man ruled the world. All of Asia, all of India, all of Africa, all of it was colonized by white people. Over here in America, in 1910, that was 20 or 30 years from the closing of the frontier. They say that the frontier was technically closed, I don't know, in 1876 or 1886, that the frontier of America was closed. In other words, that America is complete. Although they had the struggle against Spain in 1901, where they took Cuba, they took the Virgin Islands, they took the Philippines. When I was a kid, we referred to the Philippines as the Philippine colonies. Okay, so in 1910, white people ruled the world, either under the British Empire, either under the French, right? Either under the Dutch, either in Africa, that was one country, the Congo, that was owned by Leopold, King Leopold. He actually owned the Congo himself. And so all of the world was controlled by white people. Okay, when Jack Johnson won the championship, I think it was at least 50 black people that was lynched and burned and killed on that day. At least 50, from memory. And one man was killed because he went down to a place and he said, give me some eggs, beat up like Jim Jeffries, you know, scrambled eggs, and some coffee, black as Jack Johnson. They killed him. At least that's what my father told me. And Muhammad Ali have his own style. And in each one of these people, out of all the champions, they were the ones that employed psychology and special movements in their fights. Many people think that Muhammad Ali was the best champion in history. Technically, I believe it was Jack Johnson. But that's up for debate. So each round of the fights that we have had with the system, let's say this was a regular fight, we would be ahead on points. The first stage, let us understand, we have been here many times before. I wanted the subtitle of this talk to be Deja Vu. We have seen this all before. We have made our strategies, our plans, and we have implemented them over and over again. And now I want to explain to you what our position is at this time, where we are, where we want to go, and basically how we plan to get there. So, in the fight they have points. In this fight with the system, we have been, or we are points ahead in this fight. This fight, we had to choose what type of fight do you want to have. So, years ago we knew that our struggle would not be short range. We knew that this fight was going to be long range. It was going to be a protracted struggle. It would be a long range struggle. So we would have to have superior strategy. That would be a surface strategy, but it would also be a strategy that really exists out of sight, below the surface. And we had to have tactics of the same sort. Tactics that you could see on the surface, but they also had a subterranean effect, a deadly effect. We had to have this open fight, let's say a public ass-kicking of the system. No, remember, we're having a fight. This has to be a public ass-kicking. You have to remember, understand who we are. We are just a handful of Negroes. We're a handful of Negroes, right? Okay. You don't find anywhere in history, especially in America, where a handful of Negroes have been successful in doing anything harmful to the system, either from outside the system, trying to blow it up, or inside the system, cooperating with it. All right, we know from the history that the system is going to have eyes on you. He's going to divert you. You're going to have high qualities of discipline, self-control, self-management. You're going to have to have plenty of tenacity, the ability to hold on. Okay, that's what you're going to have. So in our analysis, from the very beginning, our analysis began to coalesce. Let's see, say around, if we opened the Masjid in Oakland in 1980, by 1985 we had went through several changes and transitions that we could now understand the environment fully. I mean, really understand the environment that we're struggling in. We have to go and see the history of America and how it deals with peoples. And that has to be an accurate analysis. I won't talk about family and friends and all that involved, but if you have been doing something over so many years, the longer you go around, the more time the government has to influence your activity, to surround you, right? To influence and affect your own activity. The more time that you give him, the more time they can influence family, influence friends, influence the environment around you. Remember, he's watching you too. He's studying you in detail. Now, this struggle, this public ass-kicking, has to be sophisticated. You can't be no dummy and do it. So now we're going to go through some of the changes, some of the tactics and some of the strategies that we have used in order to produce this example of tenacity, long-range survivability, right, and implementation. Now remember, strategic management, very simple. Scan your environment. You know, look at your environment, study your environment, the history, the behavior patterns, the assets of the environment, the historical behavior realities that have produced certain things, and the ideas, everything. You have to study all of that. That's scanning your environment. After you scan that environment, now you have to make a plan or a strategy. Your strategy emerges out of the study, the analysis that you have made of the behavior pattern, of the realities, of the assets, of the resources, all of those things that the system has. Your analysis has to be correct, because your plan and your strategy will emerge out of those realities. Then after you come up with this strategy, the tactics are short range, basically, and strategy is long range. I'm just being brief. It's that and more. But tactics are the things that we do from day to day, right? And strategy is the overall picture of where we want to go. So after we come up with that strategy and those tactics, then we have to implement those. Implement them. Do them. Okay. When we look around our world that we live in right now, we see great speakers. Noam Chomsky. What's the man in white scarf? Cornel West. We see Mr. Wolf, whatever his name is.
Yeah, Richard Wolf. Richard.
All of the communist man and all of that. Okay, they give great lectures. Noam Chomsky, all these people, Noam Chomsky been lecturing since '66. I looked at a picture of him, I said, that don't even look like him. He was so young. He's written books. I remember books on Noam Chomsky in the early '80s. One of my friends, a Christian Arab, he saw where I was headed, and we was in a joint together. He gave me a book by Noam Chomsky. Must have been '79, '80 or something, you know. It was about Central America or something. It's a good analysis. The lady wrote the book, give the lectures on the Jim Crow. Michelle Alexander. All of them give great lectures. Christopher Hedges. But guess what? Why have all of those people never finally got together after decades and decades of giving all those good lectures, ever said, we have to do something about all this? Why? They take up, you can't get on a college campus. You have to run them over or tie them up somewhere before you can even get on the campus. They're going to be there. Are they there on purpose? Yes, they are. Yes, they are. The system, when you study the system puts out people and it allows and it makes famous its own crew. And its crew listens, hears, riles up, misdirects, and identify all the people that might be, why have no rebellion happened in America after all this? Because all the good people hear those people, and then they go to their house, they write them letters, right? And boss man got the list. That's their purpose of being there. We want to influence those people. We're saying this right now so we can call it fronting them off. We want y'all to hear what we just said. Why? Because your lectures have been good. You've done a good job telling everybody what's going on. So why have you done nothing? That's what we're calling them out about. We want you to, it's your responsibility. You can't, an intelligent man cannot analyze forever. That's like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton them. Old messy Jesse. We got used to that years ago. What they call it, paralysis of analysis or something.
Yeah, it's a paralysis by analysis.
Yeah, you just paralyzed by analyzing. You always analyze. This is the problem. Yeah. And never the solution. Now, here's the difference. We didn't scan this environment. We didn't study. We didn't came up with a plan. We didn't came up with tactics and strategies that will deal with this situation. That, right, remember, it's a long-range strategy. That's what, we had to come up with that. We done looked around everywhere. And we see, we have developed a feeling of where we're at. You know, evidently we didn't figure it out and we wouldn't be here, right? And you'll understand as we move along what the Muhammad Ali, what the Jack Johnson style is. So, if you study Muhammad Ali, well, first of all, once you finish doing your tactics and strategy, every now and then you have to go hold yourself accountable. How effective is this accountability? You research your own self. How effective have we been? How have we accomplished what we wanted to accomplish? You know, are we 70% effective? 10% effective? Right? Are we effective at all? Are we above the level or are we below the level? You have to research yourself. You have to research yourself. And you have to make, all literature says, know yourself. Know your enemy, 1,000 battles, 1,000 victories. You have to know yourself. You have to look at yourself. And you have to look at other people too. Not that you don't measure yourself up against people who are they smart, they dumb, they pretty. You can't do that. But you still have to analyze. Where are we? Where are they? Right? You have to. You're in a war. Yeah, you can't do anything.
Pretty much.
Huh?
You got to be honest with yourself.
No doubt about it. You have to be, the more honest and the more accurate you are, the safer and the more, you know, anyway. So now, if you look at each round, we just looked at the fight about, you just saw the 5th and 6th, 7th, 8th round
Right.
of George Foreman.
Yeah.
George Foreman and Muhammad Ali. Let's start with that, about our tactics. George Foreman, well, first of all, he didn't understand his environment that well. When he went over to the Congo, they called it Zaire at that time, he took a dog with him, big old German Shepherd. He didn't know the history of the people. Patrice Lumumba's in them time, they used them German Shepherds to chew up on people, just like they used them here, right? But they really used them in the Congo. So when George got off the plane, he had his dog on a leash, and his dog is trying to bite everybody running around, because he's been on that plane all the time, right? So he just frisked it. The people reacted right away. In the minds of the people, they're with Ali and they're against George Foreman. They're both African American. Ali, boom away, whatever they were saying. That's what they were saying. They were with Ali. They were against George Foreman. Although everybody said George Foreman is going to win hands down, Jim Brown, all of them. During the fight, Ali would look over Jim Brown every now and then and say, "It's still here, huh?" I listened to the fight. I was in prison at that time, and Ali was doing the rope-a-dope, and I thought, listening to it, I said, man, George Foreman is killing Ali. Till I looked at the fight. And I said, man, Ali come out. He was tearing him up. Ali was ahead on points the whole fight. And when he got on the rope, you could see in the round he was letting George just hit at his body, hit at it. But you saw his hands, he was catching everything. He was catching everything. What did George look like just before he got knocked out? The last 2 rounds, he was throwing blows, and it was just weak. You remember saying, it was sissified. He couldn't hurt nobody, right? Why? Muhammad Ali studied him. George was so bad, he was knocking people out in the first, in the second, and the third round, maximum, right? He had never went